Joyce and Daniel Dubois are apparently still set to face each other in October. But because of the long layoff they've both had, the inactivity, they're now also set to have interim bouts before they face off. So Joyce's interim bout will be on the 25th of this month, July, against some guy called Michael Wallish. If we slide on over to Wallish's BoxRec page, you can see here that he is 20-3 with 13 KOs, all 3 losses by knockout or stoppage. He's a German heavyweight. He is 6'5.5" with a 77-inch reach, according to BoxRec. His last bout was a 3rd round stoppage defeat to Tony Yoka, and that was back in 2019. Prior to that, he beat some journeymen. Then he was stopped in 2 rounds by Efe Ajagba. Prior to that, he was stopped in 5 rounds by Christian Hammer. And other than that, there's not really much on Wallish's resume, just a bunch of journeymen. One name I do recognize actually is Ivica Bakurin. I recognize that name. I'm sure he's fought Dylan White or somebody like that, Ivica Bakurin. I think he's a fairly well-traveled journeyman, and I think he's been to the UK a few times. Could be wrong. But anyway, I may have seen the Ajagba fight because I've seen most of Ajagba's bouts, so I may have seen that. But I'm going to go and have a look at Wallish again on YouTube and see what I can find out about him in terms of if he has any ability at all. His record suggests that he's going to be a fairly soft touch for Joyce. He's been stopped by Yoka in 3, Ajagba in 2, Christian Hammer in 5. You wouldn't imagine this guy's going to put out much resistance, but as I say, I'll do my due diligence and have a look. Now, as far as Daniel Dubois, his next fight, his interim bout, will be against somebody called Eric Pfeiffer. Now, unlike Joyce's opponent, Pfeiffer is actually undefeated. He's only 7-0, but what he has in common with Joyce's opponent is he's also German. Although he was born in Russia, he is based in Germany, and his nationality, according to BoxRec, is German. He's certainly got a German name in Pfeiffer. Doesn't sound particularly Russian to me. But Pfeiffer fought in the World Series of Boxing, and I think he actually did pretty well in the World Series of Boxing. We'll have a look in a second. I had a cursory glance on YouTube at a few clips of his fights, and in his last bout against Adnan Redzovic, he was actually dropped in that fight. And that's probably why Dubois' team have chosen to take this as an interim bout, because if he hadn't shown any vulnerability and he was 7-0, they may not have chosen to take it, because as I say, he did have a pretty good run in the World Series of Boxing. I'm going to have a look at his amateur career in just a second. He's undefeated. He's 33 years of age, 6'3", so, a couple inches shorter than Daniel Dubois. Doesn't say his reach here. Now, in terms of his style, from what I've seen, and actually prior to, well, back in 2019, he fought several times. And in one of those bouts, as we can see here, against some guy who's 4-2-1, the name I won't even try to pronounce, he had a majority decision over 6. And that's not really a good sign for him, is it? If he's having a majority decision with a guy with that type of record. So, but these things do happen. I'm not going to completely write him off as a fighter, but it was more his last bout against Redzovic where he got dropped, and his legs were badly gone, by the way, when he got dropped in that bout. That knockdown and the fight itself is on YouTube, so any of you can go look that up. Now, if we have a look at his amateur record for a second, where are we at? Am record. What does it tell us? He had 25 bouts, although BoxRec is not really the definitive place to go for somebody's amateur career. He may have had more amateur bouts than this, because I've seen some fighters who I know for a fact had a significant number of amateur bouts, but they only list a fraction of them on BoxRec. But if we have a look at some of the people he fought, even according to BoxRec, there's some decent names on here. Robert Camarel, lost on points to him back in 2008. Zili Zhang That's that Chinese heavyweight. He lost to him, but also beat him. Who else have we got here? Oh, he lost to Anthony Joshua in one round in 2011. I'm taking it that was in the World Championships. What event was that? Yeah, in Azerbaijan. Yeah, the World Championships, World Games, whatever they call it. I always misname it. So he lost to Anthony Joshua, and he fought Zhilei Zhang several times, it seems. Ivan Ditchko, but he's losing to most of these guys. Sergey Kuzmin lost to him. Nista, he actually stopped Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. In 2013, he beat Nista. That's a decent win there. Lost to Ivan Ditchko again. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he's mixed in good company. Even if he's lost to most of the top guys he fought in the amateurs, he did fight some good fighters there. There's no question about it. Now, if we go over to his World Series of Boxing record, let's have a look at the guys he faced in the World Series of Boxing. Beat Tony Yoka in the World Series of Boxing. That's obviously a good win. Beat him twice. Beat Nista in the World Series of Boxing. Another good win. But then lost to Nista later on in the World Series of Boxing in the 9th round. So, yeah, again, same as with his amateur career, mixed in good company. He appeared to have done better in the World Series of Boxing than he did in those top-level amateur tournaments. So, to me, at least on paper, this looks like a better opponent than the guy Joe Joyce is facing, Wallish. Now, in terms of Eric Pfeiffer's style, from what I've seen of him, he looks like a typical German fighter. He fights with his hands held very high. He works behind the jab. He's relatively well schooled. You know, he throws his punches correctly and all that kind of stuff. You go back to his pro record here. As a pro, he's got 5 KOs. So I'm not really sure what kind of power he has. It's difficult to say. Certainly in his amateur career and in the World Series of Boxing, he didn't have the highest KO ratio. But when you're fighting the elite level guys, you're not going to have the highest KO ratio. You know, particularly in amateur bouts where there's only 3 rounds to get it done. So you can't really read too much into that. He certainly doesn't appear to be a prolific puncher. Let's just put it that way. But, you know, any guy above a certain weight is going to have a decent amount of oomph on his punches if he catches you right. He tends to weigh, if we look here, in the high 230s, low 240s, although for his debut, he was 229 pounds. So, yeah, stylistically, just a typical German fighter, hands held high, uses the jab a lot, you know, throws fairly decent combinations. His hand speed, to me, didn't look that bad. Didn't look amazing, but it didn't look that bad. I've seen much worse hand speed on heavyweights. So, yeah, that's Eric Pfeiffer. I'm expecting Daniel Dubois to deal with this guy, definitely. But if either opponent is going to put up any kind of resistance, I expect Dubois' opponent to put up more resistance than Joyce's opponent. Just looking at the form, the track record, the fact that Pfeiffer is undefeated, he's going to see this as an opportunity. He, I'm sure, knows that Daniel Dubois is a hot ticket in British boxing, one of the top heavyweight prospects in the world. So himself being a prospect, he's going to be looking to upset the apple cart. He's going to come with a lot of ambition. Whereas the guy who Joe Joyce is fighting, I suspect he's probably just coming for a payday. I mean, I could be wrong. Sometimes these unheralded fighters are more spirited than you expect. But just looking at his recent track record, being stopped by the likes of F.A. Jagbar, Tony Yoka, and even Christian Hammer, and these are all fairly recent losses. I mean, the Yoka bout was his last bout. So, yeah, when you take that into consideration, I'm not really expecting him to put up much resistance against Joe Joyce. But the thing about Joyce is because he's so slow and cumbersome, I think he kind of invites resistance from his opponents. You know, his opponents will get brave because they see opportunities there because he's so slow and cumbersome and throws these very unorthodox shots and leaves himself open all the time. He just invites resistance, but that usually plays into his hands. You know, when his opponents open up, it gives him more opportunities to get his own shots off. And yeah, he usually manages to deal with the matter. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Joyce and Daniel Dubois having interim bouts before they face off with each other in October. That's the plan at the moment anyway. And how are you guys feeling about that fight? Assuming it goes ahead, because it's a crazy world we live in, but assuming that bout goes ahead, how many of you are picking Joyce and how many of you are picking Dubois? Last time I asked you guys, the overwhelming majority were picking Joyce. The overwhelming majority were picking Daniel Dubois. Only a relatively small minority picking Joyce, but that may change over time. That may change after we see their interim bouts. In fact, one thing I forgot to tell you guys is when the Pfeiffer fight is happening. That's actually on the 29th of August, the Daniel Dubois, Eric Pfeiffer fight. So Joyce is fighting first, and then Daniel Dubois is fighting about a month later. So Joyce this month and Dubois next month. Yeah, let me know how you guys feel about it in the comment section below. And particularly if you've got more knowledge of the opponents than I have, Michael Wallisch and Eric Pfeiffer, particularly Pfeiffer, because he, to me, looks like he's got more potential than Wallisch. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below, people. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.